Hey, welcome here to this wonderful podcast. Joined here by Jared and by James. How you guys doing today? Happy that you joined us.
Yeah.
I'm having a little bit of problems with my voice today, so if I crack, I assure you I've already gone through puberty. Okay. I've already gone through it, so but it's kind of cracking a little bit today. But what we're going to do today, we are going to talk about startup. We talk to customers all day long.
Yep.
And, you know, about 50-60% of them are startup guys,
Easily.
right? Or startup gals.
Easily.
They have an idea, they have a vision for a product, or they want to get into the business because they think that they can really bring some value to the table. They want to invest and they want to start something. So what a business guy does is come up with the money.
Yep.
Right. And how do you come up with the money? You got to have a business plan, right?
Yep.
And you got to have a good focus. That's
Right.
the other thing. If you don't have the focus, you're not going to be able to really articulate to customers or to your investors that, hey, you ought to be investing in me versus someone else. So,
Right. This is why. You just
exactly.
can't have a good idea. You got to have a lot more behind that idea. To
Right.
make it come to
exactly.
fruition.
Exactly.
Executable, executable plan.
Executable plan.
Exactly.
And the executable abilityness plan. I like that. That's awesome. That's good. I like it. Yeah, so we need to have an executable. That is the absolute truth. So what we're going to do is kind of go over some of the elements that you need to have in your back pocket in order to really move forward with doing a business plan, putting it all together. And I think it really starts off first with strategy. So
Yeah.
I'm going to kind of go into that. Is that my phone? Aha! It is my
It was getting a little louder there.
Okay. Okay. All right, that's awesome. You don't cut that out. That's classic. Okay. So this is our business school.
Yes. Yep.
So the topics that we're going to be covering over the next several weeks are strategy, how to create a business plan, how to do like a cap table. A lot of people don't know what those things are, so you need to be able to articulate to your investors how much their investment is going to get them. We'll spend a whole entire podcast just on creating the cap
Dissecting
table,
that.
right? So if I give you $10, how much of your company do I get, right? That's
Basically.
essentially it, right?
Yep.
And who owns it already, and how much do they own, and what percentages do they own, and all that
Right.
stuff. So we're going to kind of go over how to create a cap table, a little bit about PPMs, which are private placement memorandums. A lot of different ways to raise money these days, but most people raise them through Reg D, which is Regulation D, which is SEC regulation. Typically, it has a less requirement. You don't have to register in order to raise money. You can do the
Okay.
registration afterward with the
right.
SEC. That's why Reg D raises are so popular. And typically, you're limited to accredited investors, and you're also limited to friends and family and things
right.
like that. There are a whole bunch of rules, of course, and you just need to know what those rules are. We'll be going over some of those rules,
Okay.
and I'll show you an example of a PPM.
Yeah.
Then the pitch. Obviously,
Ooh.
when people think about raising 6 big ones, in other words, 6 million,
Yep.
or 10 million, or whatever you got out of
Yep.
your own pocket, some people do that. Usually, you want to have reduce the risk by having more people participate in your plan. So
Right.
you need to have a pitch.
Yeah.
If you can't articulate what it is that you're doing and why it is that you're doing it, and what your value is, and all that stuff, you might as
Yep.
well, you're not going to be able to raise any money. So.
Throw in the towel. No, nobody's going
Right.
to give you any money.
And then the slide deck. Now the pitch and the slide deck, a lot of people think that those are the same thing, but they're not.
Okay.
They're absolutely not.
All
I'm going to go
right.
through all those with you. So you guys are going to be like experts on
Business
startup
plan.
business, creating business plans, looking at strategy, and we're going to focus this podcast on the strategy part of it. We're going to
Okay.
start there.
Yep.
You got to begin with the end in mind.
Absolutely.
Okay. Is there a statue in the marble?
Yeah, I like
Is
that
the
analogy.
view worth the climb?
Yeah,
right? You
absolutely.
really have to understand.
Absolutely.
If you don't know if the view is worth the climb, you got to understand, and you got to. Sometimes it takes you got to visualize what that view looks like in order to say,
Right.
"Well, that's worth it. I'm going to take the risk to go there." Right?
Yep.
What I noticed and what we usually encounter is a lot of people at the very beginning, they don't get off on the right foot.
No.
And because they're listening to too many people.
Yep.
And everybody has 1,000 ideas about what to do with your business.
More than one way to skin a cat.
And they want to be involved. They see something maybe that's going to blow up, or they want to be a part of it. And
Yep.
so they're trying to figure out how to do it. Now, one thing that startup people typically make is they want to bring in a tremendous number of people into your organization and make them owners. Yep. And one of the things that you really got to watch out for is people who want to own the company, you want to kind of limit it to people who are going to put the money in. You can incentivize your employees in a different way. That's a separate subject. When you start off, you got to make sure that the people who are actually putting the money in are the ownership, okay? And you also don't want to have a 10-headed dragon.
Yes.
Like a super powerful person, super powerful person, super powerful person.
Everybody vying to get
alpha,
there.
alpha lady, alpha male, alpha, alpha bear. Okay,
then you got all
be
these
careful
people.
because then you got too many chiefs and not enough workers, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Things along those lines. So when you start out, there's a couple different things. I like to keep it as small as possible. A lot of people like to throw out shares like candy. It doesn't really help at all because you usually in your company, it's kept small, and you really can't afford to have a bunch of minority shareholders in there.
Yeah.
It actually hurts your company. So wait until you go to public to really make that happen. Then that's when you can start handing out, incentive shares, and that's when you can start handing out things. So that's just some advice from, for small business.
Keep it small at
Keep
first.
it small. Yeah.
Don't
Small business is small for a reason, right?
Right.
And you want to keep it small. Like, for example, usually an owner will have to write their name on everything. Right.
Oh, okay. Yep.
That's the profits. Yes. Great. Everybody loves that because they like to think there, but
Yep.
they don't like to think of the other side with the debts and the personal guarantees.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to sign up for $10 million in debt? You want to sign up for $6 million in debt? You want to put your name on there because if you're an owner, you're gonna, right? So because they're going to require it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something you need to think of. There's always the yin and the yang. There's the person who's going to put everything on the line, and then there's the person who's going to get reward for that eventually.
Right.
Now, in my experience, Uncle Sam always gets paid first.
Yep.
Okay, so
Right
it's
off the
like
top.
they've made way more money off of my company than I have, to tell you the truth. So it's kind of funny. So education, need to educate and know the process. A lot of people want to know when they first start out, they want to know, hey, what about this process? I want to learn everything there is to know so that I can understand how to get into this business.
Make
a lot
smart
of people
decisions.
Start from there. So they're looking at all this stuff. They know there's money there to be made. And a lot of times they'll want to come in on the education side. We have tons of educational resources for you guys.
Calculators, guides, the mini course. I mean, the podcast.
Yeah,
It
you
just
got
doesn't end.
downloadables,
Yeah.
things like
Quizzes.
that. You can go in there and look and learn, and heck, you can call us up and ask us some questions.
Anybody can sign up for a free 20-minute CBD jam session and be more than happy to go over anything you guys want to talk about.
Right, exactly.
Just want you to move forward.
Yeah, a lot of times people want to come and talk to us, and it's no problem at all. I mean, we can, start off with a 20-minute jam session, like you say.
Yep.
Kind of go over where you're at with everything, and kind of give you a couple pointers as to what the next steps ought to be.
Yeah.
Reducing confusion over conflicting information. It's not only from vendors, but it's also from all your friends,
your consultants, your friends,
all your
everybody
friends,
telling
all
you
your
how it's
people who
done.
want to,
guys on Facebook.
We got to do dabs, man. That's what we got to do. Forget about it. If we're not doing dabs, we're not going to do it. Oh, we need to do diamonds too. Okay, diamonds. Okay, but that's honestly, that's a very small part of the market.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
and, it's not that it's not big. It is
Right.
big.
There's definitely money.
But
in
if you're
it,
going to be the number one dab company in, say, all of California, okay, great. That's an awesome business plan.
Absolutely.
And that's a great strategy
it's gonna
too,
take a lot of
because here
work.
we are. That's what we're doing. We are going to be the number one dab company in all of California.
Yep.
That's a great business strategy.
Right.
Because you are saying, we're not going to be the biggest, oil producer in all
at
the world.
Everything, or
at
we're gonna
everything,
have the best
right?
flour and the best distillate,
Right, it's the
and
best.
diamonds,
So you wanna. So a good strategy will take your options and it will bring them down and bring you focus to your business. Okay,
Yep.
That's reducing your options and then clarifying confusion over various recommendations from consultants and maybe your friends or maybe your family, or clarifying and then making sure that you have a cost. So obviously you need to know what your costs are right at the very beginning. Quality. Making sure that you select the right vendors and everything. And a lot of times people rely on other people to help them with all of these decisions.
Oh, yeah.
Someone who knows the business along with compliance and experience. So these are really the customer needs. We speak to every one of these needs throughout our entire, what we would call a sales process. But it really, what it is an educational process for us.
Absolutely.
I mean, for us to you guys, because we don't want to sell equipment to people who are not going
to know how to use it or make money off of it.
Or whatever. A lot of what I do actually is, kind of downselling.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, well, we want to do, a ton a day. Okay, well, why don't you start off with 400 pounds a day? Okay.
Right.
Something like that. Or, why don't you start off with 200 pounds a day?
Yeah.
See how it goes. Make sure you can sell it. Make sure you get your, so
Yep.
this is the whole crawl, walk, run strategy
Yep.
that we're famous for. We want to try to right size the business at the very beginning and
Yep.
make it scalable. Right?
Exactly.
So that
Yep.
you're
Not
you're reducing your risk.
Yeah,
Your startup risk.
Exactly. You're not overselling on the equipment needs that they're, selling them a package that they're only going to use 3 months out of the year.
Right.
We want to keep it,
Right.
keep everything kind of going.
Yeah, we're not John Deere. So those guys do that.
Oh yeah, they're just killing the game.
There are thousands of books written on how to do business strategy.
All right.
Okay, and there are college courses. Every company that is public and even private companies, oftentimes they'll have a strategy process where they are focusing in on certain things, and all the business people are in there trying to say, okay, here's what we're going to focus on this year. Here's the budget that we need, and then it goes into an operating budget cycle, and then they get funded, and then they do it. Okay, and usually what that is hey, here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to focus on. They get the budget, they do it, and then it has to produce fruit. Right, it has
Right.
to actually produce fruit.
Yeah.
Otherwise, those business guys get fired.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, that's what's happening. But
Yep.
even more fundamental than that, when you're talking about startups and small companies, it's really important that you start off with a couple different things. The things that all companies really struggle with, and how do we create customers, for example? How do we grow accounts? What are the gaps? And what's our pledge? And why we win? Oh, yes. So this is great. So this is awesome. You can see there's multiple things. So I actually just deleted all of our information that was in there. We've been doing this now for 4 years. Every year we sit down as a group with whoever your core group is, and you kind of get an idea. What are we all about? Our core values change. In fact, your core values should not change, from year to year.
Right.
But there was some things that really what animates you, what makes you
Unique.
unique.
in your business.
Yeah.
Yep.
One of ours is deliver the wow. Okay, this is was something we had talked about at every step of the way, and we haven't been 100% successful at that. It's very hard to take an entire business and deliver the wow. The customer has things that's going on in their life,
Right.
and in their business, and sometimes it's just very difficult to deliver the wow. Okay, sometimes as a vendor you become a fall guy for someone else's problems.
Yeah.
That's true. So if you have that as a core value, that, okay, this is what every one of us, I see what you're doing and I say, wow,
Yep.
that could be example of a core value. Okay.
Definitely.
I think that you can hash these out. We actually had a list of like 10 or 12 that we put out there, and we kind of put it down to like 4 or 5. We argued about it a lot as to what it was, and I had science is everything and stuff like that, but it didn't show up on the list actually.
Right.
We ended up, talking about other things, but it's really important that you as a group, and whoever is going to be working in your core group, and that would mean the CEO, the CFO, usually the operations guy, and then whoever your line managers are, that you all get into a room and you really talk about what it really is that makes you tick. Okay.
Yep.
Sometimes the group will come up with a set of core values, and you will figure out, I don't fit in those core values.
All right.
Those are not my core values.
Yep.
Okay. And that's kind of the time that you maybe want to, just kind of admit that and say, hey, look, that's, if that's what the company is, maybe that's not for me, maybe I need to go somewhere else. Sometimes it's really good to really articulate those as a company, okay? Because you're going to get everybody who have their own core value.
Yeah.
Well, what if one of the top guys has his own core value, and this other top guy has his own core value, and they're running different parts of the company? There's going to be major conflicts.
Yes.
So it's really important that you're all aligned on your core values. So that's really, what your purpose and your cause is a part of that core focus. Okay. So those are really important things that you articulate as a team. Yep. And that's going to also give you an idea as to what your niche is. Now, you really got to boil that down. What is your niche? Like, for example, what are your 3 uniques? Okay. What is it that really makes you different from everybody else? Are you just going to be a Me Too company? Well, how are you going to make that work?
Right. You're just another guy out there making tinctures. You got to have something to separate yourself from everybody else.
Yeah. If you're saying, okay, my goal is to become the #1 tincture in the major Atlanta market.
Yep.
And I know that I can do that because my niche in my brand, it's already well known. And by the way, I know all these distributors, and I think I can get it. So what's the niche in that case? Well, the niche may be you can execute on it. You can make a brand, and you already have a brand.
Right.
Maybe that's your niche brand. Maybe you want to make something unique about maybe want to have like a certain ratio of CBG to CBD.
Right. Those
and talk about it, designer blends and things like that. So you need to really articulate, what your core values are, what your niche is, and then also what your core focus is. So obviously they're going to help you also select your people.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have the people who are not aligned with those core values, obviously it just doesn't work.
Right.
The other thing that you want to also do is cast a vision for the future. Okay.
Yep.
And where do you see the company in 10 years, for example? What do you see? What's the target? And usually the target is some sort of a money target.
Yep.
Like, okay, we are going to be a $10 million company in 5 years. Okay.
Yep.
Well, if you're going to be a $10 million company in 5 years, okay, so what does that look like? And basically, what does it look like? Well, we're going to have a 50,000 square foot building, and we're going to be CGMP, and we're going to have exports all over the world, and we're going to have a major customer. We're going to have 50 employees, and we're going to have one shift. Cast the vision. What does it actually look like, right?
You have to have an idea in your head and something to reach for or attain to.
Right.
You don't just, if you're just taking it as it comes.
Paint a picture, if you can see the picture, and that's kind of what this whole idea of the 3-year picture is that you can kind of bring that down. Like if I have a 10-year goal to be a $10 million company, that means typically I'd have to do about 1 million per year increase in growth, right?
Right.
That means I have to, take on another 10 customers per year.
Yep.
That means I have to acquire 1 per month.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines.
Yeah,
that's the type of thing that forces you to get into. Before we go on to the 3-year picture, we need to talk about the market strategy. And that's really, there's a lot of different types of strategy. There's product strategy and then there's market strategy, okay?
Right.
We're an equipment company, right?
Yeah.
Suppose we just made a bunch of equipment and we never didn't have a market strategy. In other words, we're not focusing on this market. We're doing all markets. Okay, so we're going to try to get the pharmaceutical companies in here. We're going to food companies in here, seed oil companies in here, all this stuff, right? And we're basically doing everything. As opposed to we're doing hemp and cannabis and that's it.
Right.
Or we're doing hemp and cannabinoid, separations, and that's it. And that's what we
narrowing
do.
down that focus.
Yeah. Or other way to say it would be we're doing botanical extractions and that's it. Versus other types of extractions. Okay, that's another a narrowing focus. Okay. The question then arises is where do you want to have that focus? Well, you want to put that focus in on markets that are growing, right?
Yes.
What if we had said, okay, we're going to focus only on the pharmaceutical market? Well, high barriers to entry.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, the growth on that type of equipment, maybe 6% compound annual growth rate, as opposed to in the botanical market, which is, 25, 30% compound annual growth rate. Right. So once you want to focus on the right market. So
definitely.
The market strategy looks at all the different markets and says, this is the market that has the highest compound annual growth rate, the lowest barriers to entry. We're going to go there.
Yeah.
Okay. And there are books written just on this, and people have all kinds of charts and bubble charts, and they're like, oh, this is what it is, and then they visualize it. But at the end of the day, people know a good market when they see it.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And they know, hey, this is really growing, right? And
Yeah.
they can go and they can find a market report to tell them how much it's growing and how many billions of dollars are available for harvesting in the next 3 or 4 years. So that's really what a market strategy is. So this is really, why do you win? Why are you going to win in the marketplace? That kind of brings it down to sales. Okay. A lot of scientists who start companies, they have a problem with this, right? So I'm a scientist. I'm going to start a company. Well, we win because of the technology. Well, no, actually, that's not why you're going to win. Because people aren't going to buy the technology. They're going to buy a product that they like.
Yeah.
And that has demand.
Confident in.
And they're confident in, okay? Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I have the best little gadget here that is going to really help people. Okay, well, that's fine. Then that's feature, benefit, value then.
Yep.
Okay, well, here's the feature that I have. Here's the benefit that it's going to give you. And then here's the value. Here's why it's going to save you money. Or here's why it's going to, make you more money.
Yep.
Or here's how, so feature, benefit, value. Okay, so why we win. Why do we win, for example, or what could be called the United Science Advantage. We have a really good set of things that we have, and we went over some of those in the Foundations for Success presentation that we did, why we win. And it is true, why we win. We have scalable solutions. We have some of the best equipment, lowest footprint, highest throughput, GMP solutions, full solutions, all this stuff that really brings people together into a full package. We see this a lot where people will go shop a quote, right?
Yep.
They're trying to get apples to apples comparison, okay?
Right.
And so someone will give them a low ball quote, like, okay, here's a piece of equipment and here's some other ancillary equipment, and that's it. You know, but that's only like a fraction of the story, right? You have so much more that you need to have in order to make it, you know. So there's all these hidden costs that they're not talking about, and they're just making the decision on what's the lowest cost. It doesn't make sense at all. So you really need to talk about your company and why you're going to win with the company. Okay, I have the ability to cut contracts with the DoD because of my involvement with the DoD. Okay.
Yeah.
That could be something why you win. Yeah. And because I worked for the DoD for the last 30 years, and I know all them, and I know all the generals, and they're gonna give me lots of contracts. So that's a really great way. You know, and we're gonna be able to do that. Or you could be any of the other things like or I used to work
FDA.
for FDA or and military industrial complex, or the pharmaceutical industrial complex, or the pharmaceutical FDA complex. Whatever, you got to be aware of all those, of course. Or one example would be I worked for Costco. Okay, I was a buyer for Costco. I know what the needs are. I'm pretty sure that this would fit in there, and that's kind of why we win. Okay. Things along those lines. But the whole question of why you win, you notice how it's always winning is money.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So it kind of brings it back to, you know, you can't have something other than money. Well, okay. Why do we win? Well, because I talked to 10 customers today. Well, that doesn't make any difference.
Right.
You're making it. Okay. Who cares if you talk to 10 customers today? Did you close any of those customers?
Anybody buy
Show
anything?
me the money. So something along that lines. So then, what's the 3-year picture? Look, if you guys sit down and you actually fill this out, it'll change everything. A lot of people just don't do it. They look at it and like, oh, well, that's just, and then they'll be with their partners. Their partners all have a different idea.
Yeah.
You know, you got to get in there and you got to talk about it. You need to facilitate it. You know, if you need someone to facilitate it, give me a call. Okay. 3-year picture, revenue date, what the revenue looks like in 3 years, what the profit should be, what the measurables should be. Those are really actually pretty awesome. Yeah. You know, okay, so here, let me give you a good example of a 3-year picture. We're going to be a $5.5 million company with a 67% gross margin. We're going to have 22% flow through to the bottom line, and we're going to measure inventory turns and number of leads per week.
Okay.
There we go. So that's a good. So that's the measurable. There's the profit. There's the revenue. In future date is 3 years. So now you can work back from there. Exactly. Again, begin with the end in mind. Get your ideas going, and then work backwards. So this is this is called the EOS. I did not come up with this. It came from a book was written a couple years ago called Traction. Oh, really? And I would recommend the book to anybody. But you know, a lot of people, they read the book and then they have a hard time bringing the rubber to the road.
You mentioned EOS. Now, what is that?
Entrepreneurial Operating System.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. So once you have this filled out, there's a couple things that I like to add to it, and that is, how does a business create the customers, right?
Yep.
How do we grow accounts? What are the gaps? What the loss analysis is, and what is their pledge? So obviously your core values and your pledge should be pretty similar, right?
Yep.
So that's something you need to think about. You know, what are you pledging to your customers when you deliver something to them, right? What are you pledging? This is going to be the best tasting material that you're going to have. It's going to be better than everywhere else. That's our pledge to you. Yeah. Or our pledge to you is not to poison you with residuals. Okay. Our pledge to you is to not pump, you know, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds of carbon into the atmosphere so that you can enjoy your vape. Okay. So those are the types of things that your pledge would be. What would your pledge be? Have the smallest environmental footprint of any company around. Okay. That's something that's consumer noticeable, right? So people really care about that stuff. And then you kind of go on to the market strategy, and this is essentially another tab on the spreadsheet here, and this is where you put in your target market, what the TAM, SAM, and PAM is, which means total available market, served available market, and product available market. Those are the types of things. Now, a lot of people when they get in there, they do their pitch, right? Okay, this market is 87 billion, and all we need to do is capture 0.0001% of it, and we're going to be all, rolling in the dough. Okay, that 87 million means nothing to me. What is your product available market? In other words, the product that you are going to bring to
the $80 million.
the $87 billion dollars. What percentage of what's the total available market for your product in that market, right?
Right.
So, so that's what the difference between TAM, SAM, and PAM is. And you're actually, if you go and you do a pitch, and you talk to your investors about that, they are going to ask you that question. It's almost a guarantee.
Yep.
Like, okay, if you give them a big number, okay, well, how much is the tincture market of the $87 billion?
Right. Yeah.
How much is the, how much is the gummy market of the $87 billion that you just told me about, right?
Yeah.
They're
going to want to know
usually
specifics.
people are not impressed by a very large numbers unless you have it. And you better have the data, right at your fingertips, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What the 3 uniques are, what's the proven process? In other words, why we win. Again, process. We've been going through this in our own sales organization where we had a process, start with a different process. We had a process, we've evolved the process, we're continuously improving the process, right? But that's more or less why you win. Kaizen, right? It's Kaizen for our process, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
And then what our pledge is. So that's just a market approach, what our market strategy is. MBA types and things like that, they're going to come in with all kinds of bubble graphs, 3D graphs to make everything, 37 pages of data, along with, all the customers and customer needs and assessments and all that stuff. And all that is really, really good. It's awesome. In fact, if you can do it, great. But, if you can answer this and articulate it this, you've kind of come a long way.
Save yourself some time and some paper.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then of course your dashboard, and I'm not going to get into all the rest of this, but how do you really measure what you're doing? What are your sales and marketing metrics? What are your quality metrics? What are your operations metrics? So this really kind of gets into, here's where you're going in 10 years. Here's where you're going to be in 3. Here's your core values. Here's our market strategy, why we win. And then here's our dashboard, how we're going to measure ourselves. And then here's our 1-year plan. And this is basically, here's the goals that we're going to do this year. Okay, we're at 2 million this year. We're not making any money. We're at minus 1 million EBIT. Okay, so what are we going to do? Well, our goal this year is to become profitable. So that means we have to have 4 million on the top line with our existing whatever, which means that we have to get this many accounts per month. Okay, so that should be one of the things that you're measuring, right?
All right.
Okay. I mean, and so you really come up with a whole action list. And then you review it with all your crew and what they signed up to do every month, right?
Yeah.
And the hard thing is keeping people accountable. When they're accountable to the group, there always seems to be an endless number of excuses if someone can't quite get it done, right?
Yeah.
And so you always have a lot of grace, but eventually it's going to become very clear. Okay, this can't, some people's getting things done and other people are not getting things done, right?
Yeah.
So then at that point in time, that's when you make changes in your overall group.
Yeah.
So also the big rocks. So sometimes these are the things that are really important. Some of the things that you can only accomplish by taking them and breaking them up into little parts, okay?
All right.
Because they're big. Sometimes it's good to articulate what those big rocks are and talk about it. Okay, if it's a multi-quarter project, it's going to take you 3 quarters to do it, right? Okay, well, you need to be talking, okay, this is the big rock, this product that we're launching, or the big rock is maybe to gain the Walmart account, right?
Oh, yeah.
That would be a big rock, or to gain the Costco account, or have a foothold in Europe, for example, or something along those lines. So that's really what that is. So if you guys wanted to do a startup company and you actually filled this out, the VTO, the market strategy, your dashboard, and your 1-year plan, married that to some core processes, which are pretty much the same with all startup companies, you will find out that you will be way ahead because first of all, it's going to force you into having a focus rather than trying to do everything, right? Okay, so I raised $5 million. I'm going to do hemp fiber, hemp cement. I'm going to do hempcrete, and I'm going to do CBD oils. I'm going to do flowers, and I'm going to do farming. Well, you don't got enough money for that.
Right.
You don't even have fraction of what you need to get all that done and be successful with a market strategy. If I say, okay, I have $6 million or $7 million, and we're going to be the best tincture company in Southern California, now that may be possible then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Again,
So now you're talking
plan laid out.
You're taking a geographic area, you're bringing it down, you're doing local hyper-locality, you're focusing in on it, you're focusing in on a certain demographic.
Yep.
Southern California demographic, and here's our value here with that. So it's
Yeah.
kind of along those lines. So that's really what strategy is all about, is reducing your amount of options. And hopefully this was helpful for you guys. I appreciate you joining us. I hope it wasn't too boring. But
no.
you know, this is our startup school, so
Yeah. There's
I would think that what we could probably do is put this as a download.
definitely.
The blank one, we can
Yep.
put that as a download, and if you guys want to download this and you know, fill it out, it'd be really awesome if we could get some feedback and saying, hey, you know, I filled this out, and you know, it'd be really interesting to see what you guys come up with.
Say, hey, the next few downloads or the first couple, once it's live, we'll dissect them here on.
Yeah, absolutely, that'd be really
take the
awesome.
name off, but
we'll
yes.
put the name off.
Make it
we'll
anonymous.
kind of go in there and say, I wonder what this is about. You know, maybe do a little Shark Tank or something.
Oh, there we go.
That'd be
Yeah.
kind of fun. Okay, let's do that. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to put this EOS online, the blank one, and then you guys can kind of fill it out, and maybe in a couple of weeks we'll wait for some people to get, you know, kind of, maybe we'll just kind of look and see, we can give you some pointers or tips or something on it. So it'd be kind of interesting.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I think it will be.
All right, so good deal. Thanks a lot, and appreciate you being here, and you guys take care.
Yep. Take
See you
care,
later.
guys.
Bam!